So, having done that, spent a few minutes on that, obviously depending on how dirty your chain is, there is a massive improvement there on the quality of the chain, yeah. Just through a bit of hard work, a bit of elbow grease. So, now that the chain is completely cleaned up, and the sprockets as well, I tend to find a fixed point, like the rivet link here, and that's where I start from lubrication. Now, as I said, there are different sort of things you can use. You know, Seal Clean's very good, Muck Off's very good, the gear oil is very good. I was watching a really interesting video from Fortnite Motorcycles, and Ryan over there basically said chain lube and things like that are not, it's a bit of a, not deceptive word I'd say, but it's not the primary aim of them. They're rust preventers. Yes, it's for lubrication to some extent. We want the rollers to roll when they're rotating around through the sprockets and things like that. So we want them to roll freely, but we also don't want the chain to rust. So there's a big element of rust prevention in there. And this comes on quite neatly to why I say do not sort of aim for the back of the sprocket when you do it, but actually do spray the run. So the way the Scott Oiler system works, and the reason why I'm saying about this is because of how it works. It forces oil out centrifugally. So when the oil is applied to the run of the sprocket, down here on a Scott Oiler system, around about here, what it does is it runs along the sprocket and onto the inner run of the chain, and then goes back up around the sprocket, and is actually flung out to the outside of the sprocket, and outside of the chain, which means that the outside of the chain gets lubricated. Now if you spray it on the outside to begin with, nothing is going to be on the inside, because it's all going to fly off. I mean, there is nothing you can do to stop chain lube and things coming off. It doesn't matter how powerful your moose powered chain lube is or whatever, chain lube is going to come off. You know, you're rotating a wheel at, you know, I mean, let's face it, the engine on idle rotates inside, you know, at 1,250 times per minute. You know, that's what RPM is, revolutions per minute. So, you know, when you're doing 70, 80 mile an hour and your rev counter is reading, you know, 6,000 RPM, it's turning over 6,000 times in a minute inside the engine. Obviously the chain won't be rotating as many times as that, but let's face it, you know, the engine is a constant lubricating system. You know, it's oil in there, it's bathed in oil, it you know, it lubricates itself because it rotates so fast. That's the idea of it, that's how it works. You know, the oil inside an engine is designed to lubricate and cool it, you know. Whereas on the outside you've got a chain, there's no sort of containment of lubrication. It can't be contained, it will fling off. You know, hence why the Scott Oiler system is a loss oil system. You know, it chucks the lubrication off, but also chucks the dirt off with it, and then because it's reapplied by the the dispenser, it means it's constantly lubricated. You know, that's as close as you can get to a constantly lubricated chain, something like that. So realistically, what you're trying to do is keep the rollers rolling by lubing the chain and preventing rust. Okay, now a lot of people will absolutely cane through chain lube, because what they'll do is they'll spray an absolute ton on the chain. There is no need to. Okay, you don't need to spray a ton of chain lube on the chain at all. Okay, it's a small amount across each of the lengths, and I'll show you that now. Okay, but it's going to save you a ton of money, because those who sit there going are just wasting money. It's going to drip off, it's going to end up on the side wall of the tyres, it's going to end up on the back of the number plate. You know, there's just no point. It will fling off, it's going to happen, but you can prevent that. And as well, you don't get a nasty amount of gunk inside your sprocket casing, because I'm sure your mechanic loves that when he takes off your sprocket casing, to find a sticky, muddy, gooey mess behind your sprocket casing. So it might just make him a little bit happier as well, or her, let's be honest. Okay. So to start off with then, what I'm going to do, again using my cardboard, I'm just going to hold this behind my sprocket behind my chain as well. I'm just literally going to dab a bit of spray in the back, a bit of spray in the front, a bit of spray at the back, a bit of spray at the front. And I'm just literally going to spray a little bit each time, okay? And that's all I'm doing along, just a quick squirt all the way along. Absolutely no reason to spray a load. I should emphasise, it's pretty obvious, but just in case, don't do this with the engine running. I like my fingers, I assume everyone else does too. So just literally a single squirt, front and rear, front, rear. All the way along until you've completely done that. So then, having done that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate the wheel just to allow some of that chain lube to work in. And what you'll probably find as well, and it's already started to happening, once I get all the way around, I'll show you. This is what I mean by centrifugal force. I lubricated the inner run. That chain link is now already wet on the outside. I haven't put any real power through it. I've literally just rotated the wheel, and already the chain lube has come to the other side of the chain, on the outer side of the chain. So as you can see, it does the job. So if you lubricate the inner run down the bottom, it will fling out to the outside and will protect your chain much more efficiently and more cost effectively as well. Okay, so you're probably thinking, okay Dave, great, fantastic, show me how to do that. Great, probably already know it, but hey. But what do I do if I want to use gear oil? Okay, well there is one extra bit of kit you're going to need, and it is quite expensive. About 49p, and it's a toothbrush. Okay, the only way it works differently is, instead of obviously spraying the lubricant onto the chain, you're going to use oil instead. And all I do is just pop a bit of this oil straight onto the brush like this. If you've got a bottle cap or something like that, I would say just put some oil in a bottle cap and just dip that into there. What I tend to use is, I tend to use the up end of this particular bottle cap, and I just literally dip the toothbrush in after I've cleaned it, after I've cleaned the chain, dip the toothbrush in the oil and just gently just run this over the bottom run like that, just literally running it over the bottom, and it does the job absolutely fine. As I say, this gear oil, this EP80 gear oil, if you imagine just using one cap, that will save you a huge amount of money over spraying chain lube as well. And funnily enough, a lot of companies like DID actually recommend oil or gear oil for their motorcycle chains. So it's, you know, as Ryan put it, it's like they've done research themselves, which they have. So that's why I say I use Scott Oiler systems, just purely because it self-lubricates. It means that I know that my chain is always lubricated, so if I go through a big puddle of water, I know it's not washed off and things like that, it's reapplied. If you're not going down that route, it's fine. Just sort of every sort of 250 to 500 miles, just clean and re-lubricate your chain is all I can say. And obviously, you know, maybe look at gear oil. Gear oil is a great way to go. You know, it's going to last a long time. But anyway, I hope that's been of some use. A very underrated kind of maintenance item, chains, but very expensive, especially if you are looking at something like DID. You're looking at about 140, 160 quid, something like that, depending on where you go and what size bike you've got. But the Versus chain that I have is coming up for 2 years old this year. I have plenty of life in it, so it just goes to show how important chain maintenance is. I would say my Versus has come up to about 22,000 miles. I bought it with 9,000. I'm being generous here, probably saying I did 1,000 miles on the old chain, but it was knackered. So when I changed it over for the new DID, and I've done 11, 12,000 miles on it, something like that, in the time that it's been on the bike, and no problem at all. Plenty of life left in it, plenty of service life. In fact, 9 times out of 10, I find that, you know, the chain just gets to a point, you know, where the sprockets have worn out and I have to change the sprockets and the chain together, because sprockets are worn out rather than anything else. So what I would say is, you know, just have a look into it really, and just basic maintenance can save you a lot of money, service costs, fuel as well. Just look after them basically. But I hope this has been some help to you, and I hope to see you again guys soon as well, and take care. All right, bye.